I am Venky Rao, Accenture's North America Consumer Goods and Services Industry Lead. We are here in Chicago today at the beautiful new headquarters of Mondelēz International, surrounded by some of their more delicious brands. I'm joined by Javier Polit, Mondelēz International's Chief Information and Digital Officer. I have known Javier you for a long, long time now. You have been a big change agent throughout your career, not just here at Mondelēz, but also through your stint at the other big CPG companies.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, welcome. Welcome to our headquarters here, and we're glad to have you. And as always, it's good to be with you, Venky, and looking forward to the dialogue and sharing as much as possible.
Thank you. So let me dive right in. We are doing this conversation in the context of the AI Achievers study that Accenture has put out there, which really talks about AI and the capabilities that AI brings into an organization, how that creates the differentiation for companies. And what we have learned through that study is 12% of the winners in the spectrum of organizations have brought themselves into that space because of the AI capabilities that they have invested in. And we have seen that organizations which have significantly invested in AI have been able to deliver much better results for their shareholders, right? So in that context, knowing that you have led multiple scale digital transformation initiatives and you have been successful at that, and knowing and understanding Mondelēz International's own digital journey and your own journey to becoming an AI achiever, we wanted to have this conversation today to learn a bit more about your journey, to learn a bit more about how Mondelēz is getting on its path to becoming an AI achiever. What was the impetus for Mondelēz to becoming more of a data-driven, data-led company?
I think it all starts with our goal at Mondelēz International is to be the leader of snacking. And we need an even stronger growth strategy to keep up with the pace and even influence our consumer demand and our consumer behavior. So we really started to focus on a relentless consumer centricity in making certain that we started to aggregate 360-degree insights of our consumers. And the time was right because we had been preparing from a business perspective and also from a technology perspective. We had the right foundation in place. The company was on a cloud strategy when I joined here, multi-cloud strategy. We brought in the Google Cloud Platform. So we had that behind us. And the team was doing some great work before I joined, and we finished that work. And it gave us really time to pivot and really start focusing on data and AI.
Excellent. So now Mondelēz is on its way to establishing itself as an AI achiever. How do you continue to get there on this path?
Well, there's a lot of levers to that. So I could tell you that myself and my entire team, we're really invested in establishing Mondelēz as an AI achiever, being in that top 12%. We often talk about being industry leaders, right? And we want to create an organization and a culture. We're 10 years young. We just recently celebrated our 10-year anniversary. We have some incredible brands that have been around for almost 200 years, but we're transforming our culture, and it's a young company. So we really have the ability to become a data-driven and AI-focused enterprise. And with that comes some challenges because, you have to change the ways the company worked in the past. You got to change your behaviors. And we're driving all those things across the enterprise. And it's a journey. It's a continuous journey.
I like the phrase. It is a journey, right? But then the question is, how do you start a journey like that? Where do you start from?
The starting point is really spending time with the business, Venky, and really understanding. When I first joined, I was listening and learning. I'm still learning. I've only been with the company 2.5 years or so now. But really understanding what the pain points were. And it really wasn't about just filling one hole. It was really trying to understand that holistic opportunities that we had. And once we had that defined, it was building that vision and that strategy and making certain that you got support of the strategy by the C-suite, which we did. And the executive team and the board were all behind us. And we started to communicate that strategy to the enterprise. And that required a lot of work for us to do and say, we need to start investing in our people, elevating capabilities, looking at the strategic partners that we were going to use, right? Besides the Accentures and the Microsofts and the Googles of the world and other strategic partners, how we're going to firmly have the conversation that we had with you and all the other partners, bring your best to us as we're continuing to try to be the best that we can, and leverage partners as we're trying to build capability inside the enterprise and driving change in the enterprise as well from a behavioral and work perspective.
There is this old saying, what you track and what you measure actually gets done. So when you get on a transformation journey like this, especially in this space of AI enabled, which is all new, how do you start measuring success?
Yeah, well, you can't manage what you don't measure. We've all heard that nomenclature. I can tell you that we've had some really, really good maturity here over the last 18 to 24 months in regards to how we track, how we measure the ROIs on work that we're delivering to the business and the value based on the business case that we initially put together for the business. And through that work, what we're seeing now in all our business reviews that we have, conversation around digital comes up, the work that's being driven around digital, and with that we talk about data science and we talk about the AI work that's being done, right? You set a transformation strategy and a vision and you say, okay, it's a 3-year horizon. I always say that after the second year, you start figuring out what your next 3-year horizon is going to be. So it's something that is just never done, Venky. It's just continuous work.
Now, having said that, what are the most important factors in making a transformation successful?
Well, I think when you think about a transformation in any large enterprise, and I've had the opportunity to do this a couple of times, is you need to have the right sponsorship. Once you develop that strategy and that vision, making certain that the board, the executive team is behind it. And then you need to communicate as much as possible and communicate that strategy and what you're trying to do and communicate the sponsorship so that the whole enterprise feels good about the work that you're trying to drive and that they understand that there's a sense of importance and urgency to what you're doing. And when I talk about communicating a lot, I have about 30 touch points with my organization on an annual basis, and we talk about these things. And then the last thing is making certain that you have a core, strategic, central AI data science team that's really helping the organization. You can't have these silos in the enterprise where they're going out and building their own data science and data strategies without understanding that there's a holistic data-driven strategy, that all that data needs to come together and somebody needs to be the steward of that and monitoring. Is the data inside the enterprise? Is the data outside the enterprise? What data needs to ingress or egress from different sources? And you just can't have that working in a silo. So I would say it's probably those 3 dimensions.
Getting through a massive enterprise transformation, it's difficult, especially in large enterprises. There are complexities. There is the corporate headquarters, there are the functions, there is the businesses, then there are this whole notion of, hey, what's back office, what's front office, and so on and so forth. And then there is this aspiration that every part of your organization wants to have capabilities. They all want to get those AI-enabled capabilities and so on. Can you dig a little bit deeper and talk to us about how does the total enterprise reinvention happen practically in large organizations with all the complexities of a large organization?
Yeah, it is a little sophisticated when you look at large enterprises. And in my experience, having served Fortune 50 and Fortune 100 companies, it doesn't get easier wherever you sit. But I'm always a believer that there's a trigger in every business that could be an external trigger, like what we've lived through the last 24, 30 months, or it could be an internal trigger that drives a transformation for a company or embarks on the beginning of a transformation that will then just forever be continual. And I think when you look at those things, that starts helping you define what the strategy is going to be and what the overall company's mission and purpose is, as well as you think about empowering people in the organization to really drive some of these capabilities, right? Some companies, as you know, are mandating digital fluency. And there's a difference between digital fluency and digital literacy. We were talking about that recently. And here what we're trying to do is get beyond literacy and drive fluency, right? But it really happens with the organization. You got to bring the people along, understand the strategy, and then have the right foundations to be able to do that.
It's very, very interesting that you say that, because our study, the AI Achiever study, it really looks and calls out that among the leaders, we see the top leadership really embedding AI as a strategic priority, right? I mean, they're making it part of their corporate strategy, and they're embedding this as a key part of their core transformation initiative. Can you talk a little bit more around how that sponsorship actually happens and why that is so important that it comes top down?
I think the initial sponsorship, when I first joined Mondelēz a few years ago, I sat and I listened to the business and I spoke to the business a lot about some of the things that we were trying to do. And it wasn't that I was trying to just solve one particular problem. I was trying to connect all the dots and see how I could solve a holistic problem and build a holistic capability. And that sponsorship really starts happening once you start creating awareness of what's the possible and how you could really create that value for the business. And we did that. We talked a lot about that when I first joined. And, there was quick followers. And there were some that weren't that quick. And what I did with our team is we leaned forward with those quick followers and went working in those parts of the world, building capabilities, knowing that we'd create value with the team and then others would follow.
Mm-hmm. So, in my experience, some of the big challenges that I see is this whole notion of information asymmetry, especially in large enterprises, right? So, where yes, the ambition is there, the intent is there, but it's not very often that you have the whole organization on the same page. So, how have you tackled this challenge of bringing everybody on board with the right messaging and making sure that everybody is on the same page?
Yeah, and that challenge is continuous messaging. And the message is data matters and data is critical. And we're going to win with data. There was always this nomenclature that we would talk about a race for talent. Well, I say it's a race for data. It's a race for data that's contextual and that's relevant, that's enabled at the edges of the business with the right data governance models, that the business owns the data and ingresses the data into a repository where they have the capability to do that, combined with our data scientists that then build the AI capabilities. And that's how you're creating value with velocity. And we've been able to stand up those models. And we're still on that capability maturity curve, but it's really moving along at a quick pace for us, and it's working really well. We've seen some fantastic results. You guys may know a little bit about that because we partnered with you on some of those solutions, but we're getting very, very good results. And the organization's understanding. When you get business leaders talking about data and the importance of data, you know that you're making progress.
Oh, absolutely. So, Javier, how do you see talent and tech working together to achieve the Mondelēz vision?
Yeah, there's a lot of dimensions to that. And I will tell you that, we win with our people. Our people are our greatest asset. And we invest in our people in many different ways. And our people are critical to anything we change or anything we make. Our success is possible because of 79,000 incredible colleagues that we have around the world. And some of the things that we're doing right now is, as we continue to drive the importance of being data-driven enterprise and have an innovative culture, we're able to make those pivots and become a dynamic organization. We talk about being a dynamic learning organization, right? Where we are not a knowing culture, we're a learning culture. And we want to continue to innovate and take risk. And I think, all that's done through sound leadership, but it's also having the right partners at the table, right? And we firmly encourage our partners, whether it's Accenture or whether it's Google or whether it's Microsoft and many others, to bring the best that you have. And we've had those conversations too, to bring the best to us and make certain that we could really partner and do some really industry-leading things, right? So it's really not something that you could do on your own, but you have to have a pool of experts inside the enterprise as well as the experts that your partners bring as well.
Absolutely. And there, I really want to emphasize that, it has been a massively different experience working with you and in Mondelēz in terms of your ability to see across the whole ecosystem, whether it's your partners like us or the big cloud providers like Microsoft's and Google's of the world. You collaborate in a way wherein the learnings flow seamlessly between these organizations. And that's really a key for success. We have recently also seen in press that organizations are coming out and saying, hey, we have made our investments in cloud. We are making our AI investments. We have made digital strategy as part of our core strategy and so on. But they are still complaining that they are not able to see the ROI. They are not able to see the growth, right? I mean, there is something missing here. How are you seeing Mondelēz get the ROI that it planned for?
You have to start by taking a strategic look at the work that you want to drive and the value you want to create, right? And normally when you're doing those things and leveraging AI, it's to replace the latent human ability to do some of these things, right? And making certain that you have that ability in the enterprise. And once you're confident that you have a use case that's going to drive a business result, you start driving those and you start measuring that work, right? And seeing the changes in behaviors and the changes in the ways that you work and the speed of the outcomes that you're driving, and you measure those. And, as I mentioned earlier, we've partnered on some work that we were able to do those things. And now we're using it as an example, and it's proliferating across our regions and across our geography, right? But there's a lot of expectations. It's about the investments in improving the entire structure of the enterprise. It's not just providing a Band-Aid, right, that you want to try to solve something very, very quickly. You got to think about, in certain these cases, I said earlier, short-term and long-term strategic sustainable capabilities, right? We drive that across the enterprise and we look across the ecosystem and depend on our partners to help us as well.
Yeah, and that's what I really appreciate about the change that you're driving in Mondelez is we do see that you guys measure the outcomes, consistently measure the outcomes, and you are evaluating how far you have gone on the business case that you started the journey with. And you're also absolutely right that sometimes you have to take these risks because for many organizations, these are uncharted waters, uncharted territories, right? So you have to make those investments early on, but you still have to ensure that the ROI and then the business outcome mindset doesn't go away.
Yeah.
Now, if I,
And just
yeah,
just to add something to that, Venky, it's that business mindset, right? And also the contending business initiatives and understanding that if you start an initiative later on than was expected, that ROI that you had identified suffers as well. And it depends how you look at things. You could look at it from a capital allocation perspective. Oh, but you haven't spent the capital, but you haven't put the capital to work.
Yeah.
So do you look at what's my internal rate of return or versus my return on investment? And sometimes companies take too long to make decisions. And we're breaking those barriers too here. We're making decisions a lot quicker now as an executive team to go ahead and get these initiatives moving on time to make sure that we capture those ROIs, right? So those are things that, and we measure. We measure on a quarterly basis. We know what our strategic initiatives are, and we come back and measure how they're performing based on our business plan.
now, how are you prioritizing long and short term investments?
Yeah, short term, it's about understanding the broad needs of the business and aligning with external partners that can help us deliver on that. And when we think about long term, Venky, it's about building the skill sets you need within your own talent to be able to do it internally. Today we have a lot of partners helping us, and how do we continue to bring those capabilities and build those internally is our strategic longer term roadmap, right? But I think all these are happening simultaneously in a very complex environment as you're trying to deliver value to the enterprise. And the true value proposition for this investment, it's got to be sustainable. Anything that you do has got to be sustainable, and you got to get to that destination of having the right skill sets and capabilities that have a sustainable business model. And the core doesn't have to be large either. You're always going to have a need to bring in partners, to bring in their expertise and their skill sets. I always say that our partners have broader apertures than we do because they're dealing with the top 50 companies, and they can bring learnings to us that help us even improve even more so. So it's never going to be you have all the skill sets you need internally, just do it on your own. It's always got to be a strategic blend.
That's really fair. And if I think about the whole talent spectrum, you are not just training your employees, but you're also giving those opportunities for them to participate in various events with the ecosystem partners and partners like ourselves. I think that's a big change for this industry. It's not just be inward looking when it comes to creating the talent asset, creating that AI core, but be more participatory in a larger ecosystem. And that's something that we have seen that under your leadership, you guys are driving that at Mondelēz. Now, how have you industrialized the tools, the tooling, and how have you created a strong AI core that people don't have to reinvent this journey each time they come on an initiative?
Yeah, look, when we think about AI, we know that it's essential. It's essential to our growth, and it provides us competitive advantage. And we're really understanding what data should look like and what the data strategy is, because without good data and having accurate data, you can't build an ML that supports the AI, right? So we're making some good progress also in harmonizing data.
So Javier, how would you assess CPG industry in terms of AI maturity compared to other industries? I mean, especially I know that you look at the tech sector quite a bit, and you take a lot of inspiration from how some of the big technology companies operate. But how do you see that evolving in the CPG industry?
Yeah, we're continuously doing industry sensing in that space and see how we match up to other CPG companies or fast-moving consumer goods companies. But I think it's fair to say that the tech sector is still far ahead. But I would also say in the same breath that I think that the gap is narrowing. And especially I think what's helped us narrow that gap is companies really advancing their digital roadmaps and their digital plans, right? So I think there's enormous room for growth in AI adoption across all industries. Every company is a tech company. We've heard that phrase. I always try to extend it and say every company is a tech company And if you don't conduct yourself as such, you're just not going to be successful.
No, absolutely. And that's such a spot on answer and a brilliant one at that. So, Javier, where do you see the whole AI adoption space evolving to? And if you have organizations who want to become an AI achiever, what would be your advice?
When you think about the evolution of AI today, companies are using narrow AI, right? It's taking the ability to have a human process be conducted through AI with greater efficiency. And you have companies that are adopting that well, that are the 12% AI achievers, and those that are following and a little bit behind. And then the next level of AI is general AI or human AI, where you have artificial intelligence that can basically do what a human thinks. And the more complicated AI that's going to be happening in the future, and it's happening in different parts of the world today, is super AI, where AI can now do things better and in a smarter way than humans can. So it's going to be an evolving space. We'll have to see how those technologies, when they come to be commonplace, are going to be leveraged in different industries. And they're already starting to be used in certain industries.
So, in closing, any thoughts, Javier, as we wrap up?
There's probably an abundance of thoughts, because I think we'd all agree that it's a complicated space. But I think there's maybe 6 pillars of an AI strategy, right? And I always say start with the business value, right? Define the trapped business value and recognize the levers that you need to unlock that growth for the business. And when you think about algorithms, which are the critical algorithms that are going to solve the business value that was defined by the business? And when you think about algorithms today, it's a complicated world, right? We need to make certain that they're designed to scale and that they're unbiased, because we hear a lot of algorithms are being defined with bias now. And we have to be very cautious about that. And then you have to think about data, right? Because you understand the business now, you're defining the algorithms that are going to support that business value that you're trying to capture. And you got to look at the data and have a clear first, second, and third party data strategy, right? And make certain that you have a life cycle around that data that continues to create signals of value for the enterprise. The fourth area that I would say is a platform strategy, making certain that you have the right ecosystem. And we talked about that earlier, making certain that you have the right foundation of capabilities to create and be able to manage inside the enterprise. And then the ability to execute that strategy, right? How should enterprises be organized to be able to execute that strategy across the enterprise? And that means different teams and different responsibilities and different ways of working and different behaviors in the enterprise. And then the greatest investment is the sixth piece of this, is focused on your talent and the culture that you're building and how you're going to continue to retain, attract, and engage those resources that are helping you bring this value to life and this distinctive capability that you're building in your enterprise.
Yeah, Javier, that was an outstanding response and a very, very good framework for everybody to follow, right? So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks
Always
a lot
a pleasure.
for the time.
Thank you for the
so
time.
much.
Thank
Yeah.
you for the partnership.